Okay, today we're going to be looking at the cone gatherers, and I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to explain the text, obviously, and because it's quite a long text, it's a novel. I think probably the easiest way to do this is to essentially explain the themes and the characters by telling the story. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Um, Now, I want to say that the summary that I've used in terms of the like text summary, the content of each chapter. Um, the summary I got from I found a very good summary from one of the blogs on the Glow website, and what I'll do is I'll put that in the description. So it's I'm not necessarily gonna stick to what the analysis is in terms of like what that blog was talking about. But I'm just gonna use it for the what do you call it, for the sort of bullet point server, because it just saves me writing an entirely new summary. I thought their summary was quite good in sort of capturing the like main things that happen in each chapter and some of the main quotes from each chapter. I thought that they did a good job. So I think I'll just use that to save some time, and and then I'll add in my explanation and analysis on top of that. Okay, so just basically I'm just mentioning that just for transparency's sake and to give them credit that they deserve. Okay, so to begin with, just a sort of overview of the story. So, the story basically is about two brothers, and it's important to remember that these brothers are grown men in the story. They're not children. Um, so, because like when you first talk about this text, or you first read this text, you can sort of assume that the Callum and Neil are like children, or like Callum is a child. Now you could kind of think that, but they're not. They're grown men. Um, Both of them are grown men, and they are. Uh, uh, they're brothers. Okay, they're brothers. Okay, so the story essentially begins with Callum and Neil being hired to work on the estate, and essentially the country, a piece of land owned by this aristocrat lady called Lady Runcie Campbell, this sort of well-to-do rich woman who has this land, and they get hired to work on the land for her. They get hired to take the cones, the pine cones off which is like the seeds of the tree, and to take them off so that they could be planted in order to, grow more trees, to grow more wood for the war that's going on at the time. So okay, so this is the sort of background. There's a war going on. It's World War II, obviously. Excuse me. And their job is to go climb the trees, pick the cones, and collect them. Okay, that's simple. Okay, there's the background. Now, in terms of the two brothers themselves, the basic difference between them is that Callum is the weak, physically. Okay, also, there's something else I should mention in terms of Callum. People get this confused too. Callum is physically, in his appearance, he looks as if he's weak physically. He looks as if there's something wrong with him because he has a hunchback. And so he's physically, you could say, he doesn't look like the average person. He looks different. But but it's important to remember, okay, that Callum is not actually physically weak. He's not really physically disabled. He's not disabled. People assume that he's disabled because of how he acts, but he's not disabled. So the only thing is that he refuses to embrace or think about the darker sides of reality. Okay? So Callum is kind, he's loving, and he is gentle. He's very, like I said, loving towards everyone and everything. He loves small animals. He loves his brother Neil. Um, but excuse me, but he refuses to think about the darker decisions or the darker parts of life, like death. And also, he refuses to sort of take responsibility for himself. Okay, and this is going to be what leads to his downfall and both the brothers' downfall, to be honest with you. This is going to be what leads to them being killed, or not both of them, but being Callum being killed, it's because he refuses to be an adult. Okay, he places all of his adult responsibility in terms of acting like an adult, making decisions for himself, facing the harshness of life. He refuses to accept any of that. He instead acts like a kid, even though he's not a kid, and pretends like the real world doesn't exist, okay, in terms of the dark parts of it. And instead, he shifts all of that responsibility to his brother, Neil. Okay. Now, Neil, on the other hand, he's strong, he's mature, he makes decisions for the pair of them, he looks after Callum. He's his caretaker, if you like, in some kind of ways, in terms of like he's a leader, he makes sure that he's okay and so on. He's very self-sacrificing in that he could have had a good life, by himself if he'd just ditched his brother and left him behind. He could have had a good life, but instead he's chosen to do like the right thing and sort of look after Callum, who, as we just mentioned, refuses to act like an adult. Um, and at the same time, so those are all his good qualities. He is now pessimistic, and he is sort of not only he's pessimistic, meaning that he takes a very negative view of things in terms of he sees all the dark things in life, and also he sees dark things maybe where they're not, because he feels sort of victimized by life. He feels victimized by um people who have more money than him. He feels like people look down at the brothers and so on. He's very sensitive to any forms of criticism, any forms of negativity, because he already feels extremely negative. Okay. He's almost on the same path as Durer, except he doesn't become Durer in terms of becoming evil, because he has the saving grace, which is to take on looking after Callum. But just say if Neil didn't do that, you could very easily see him devolving, meaning the opposite, evolving, devolving, spiraling downwards to becoming a sort of Durer himself. Yeah, but he doesn't do that because he's saved by his good qualities in terms of self-sacrificing or looking after Callum in a real way, in terms of love. He still has love in his heart, and that saves him from becoming fully evil like Durer, sorry. Whereas Durer has no love in his heart. All of his love is gone, and it's replaced by hatred. Okay, so there's the story overall. Here's the backdrop, beginning of the story. Okay, so now I'm not gonna go through every single chapter. I'm just gonna sort of summarize the main parts of the main chapters, to move the story and the plot along. And what we're gonna be looking at and thinking about, okay, is a couple different themes in this text. One is a study of evil, or the nature of evil itself. Another is that would be the main theme, I'd say. If you're gonna talk about this text, do an essay on it and so on, you probably want to focus on evil primarily, the theme of evil, and that would obviously be manifested in Durer, who is essentially, besides the brothers, Durer is the main character in the text, besides Neil and what's his name, Callum. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so uh, right from the beginning, as soon as Durer sees the brothers, or even we could say, as soon as he hears about them, he hates them. Okay, he hates them, and especially he hates Callum. He has an extreme hatred for Callum. Right from the beginning. This is before Callum has even done anything to him. He already has extreme hatred towards him. And right from the beginning, he feels an extreme. You can imagine, okay, that Durer in before the brothers arrive in the wood, in the forest, on the land, on the estate, Durer is extremely filled with hate. Okay, and we're gonna see why that is, related to his wife and so on, and his own life. Durer is extremely filled with hate before the brothers even arrive on the estate. When they get there, it's almost like the appearance of Callum um pushes him over the edge. So he's already filled with hate, and he's bubbling and boiling inside, and he's just barely surviving. If you notice in other parts of the text, where Durer, when he goes on his walk, he touches the tree, and it's like a little thing that he does that would help him to not explode and to not go over the edge. But then when the brothers arrive, he can no longer touch the tree, and he begins to hate the tree and hate everything. Yes. So it's like he's almost at the edge. Okay, he hates everything, he hates everyone. He's at the edge of doing something destructive. He's had all this hatred boiling inside of him for years, and then the brothers appear, especially Callum, and that pushes him over the edge, and he now becomes obsessed with doing something destructive. He can't stop himself anymore. Okay, the hatred has been festering inside of him, boiling inside of him for such a long time, and now it has to be released. Okay. So we need to figure out, why is that? Why does he hate Callum so much? Why does he hate the brothers so much, even though he doesn't know them and they haven't done anything to him? We need to figure that out. So to figure this out, we need to it's a crazy picture, yeah. We need to first It's a shame for the woman, yeah, but it's a crazy picture, right? We need to first We need to first figure out what is the origin of his hate, his deep hate, his evil, if you like. So Durer, Durer also works on the estate. Okay, he works on the estate. And in terms of Durer's life, he has a wife who is extremely overweight. Okay, to the point that she is bedridden. She can't get out of bed. And excuse me, she can't get out of bed, and she's now, in a sense, completely dependent on Durer and her mother. Now, we are told in the text that ever since he was a kid, ever since he was young, excuse me, Durer has hated anything which had a sign of a weakness or deformity inside of it. Now, his wife, obviously, physically, she doesn't look like the normal person. You could say, in his eyes, she is physically deformed. She is deformed. And she is on him a burden. She's a burden on him that he can't seem to get rid of, even though he hates her. Even though he hates her. Now, in terms of the key heart of where all of Durer's hatred comes from, where all of his evil and hatred comes from, okay? We find it out from what we said before about him hating anything which is misshapen, deformed, or weak. If you read the text closely, what you find, okay, is that Durer believes that he is essentially the victim of many different people, many different things of life itself, of God. He has been wronged by many, many different things which are outside of his control, and they have sort of oppressed him and they have pushed him down. Now he feels like a victim. There's one side of it. He feels like a victim that his wife made these, she had, I can't remember exactly why she turned like this, if she had an accident or she made these decisions. I can't remember why. In any case, that his wife became this, overweight, bedridden individual who now he is forced to sort of look after and provide for. He feels wronged that his mother-in-law hates him, and she hits him with like little jabs and little, negative comments. He feels he feels wronged by life in general and due to his work. If I'm not wrong, he also thinks about that he should have went to the war or something. I can't remember, but there's something to do with that too. In any case, he feels wronged by God. He doesn't like God. He thinks that fate has put him in a terrible position, and everything for him in his life has gone against him. Okay, he feels like the ultimate victim. So there's the first thing, okay? He feels victimized. So he has hatred inside of him for his wife. He has hatred inside of him for his mother-in-law. He has hatred inside of him for everyone, for the whole world, for God, for everything. Okay, he reflects essentially the same kind of mindset as the traditional criminal, the traditional, mass shooter. All these people that feel extremely wronged by life, and what does this do? This generates the fantasy and the idea and the desire to take revenge, right? So there's the first thing. Now the second thing is, why does Durer hate weakness? Why does he hate weakness? Um, why does he hate weakness? So Durer hates weakness, and he's always hated weakness because he is afraid that he himself is weak. And so he is afraid and insecure about seeing weakness and deformity and um, 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 abnormal things in other people because it reminds him of his own weakness. So let me join the first one to the second one. He feels like a victim, the ultimate victim that the world, God, the universe, his wife, and everyone is stepping on, is victimizing. This, by definition, means that he feels like he has no power or very little power to do anything about this. Okay, because if he was strong, if he was powerful, he could have stopped all these things from happening, and instead he could be living a great life, right? If he was powerful. So any form of weakness outside of himself reminds him of his own weakness and his own sort of disgrace in terms of his how he sees himself. Huh? It reminds him he doesn't want to think about himself as being humiliated, as being the man who he hasn't touched his wife in such a long time because, she's bedridden and she's overweight, albeit, morbidly obese, whatever. He doesn't want to think about himself as the man who his mother-in-law hates, who, maybe he hasn't done anything really worthwhile with his life, anything significant. He's not off in the war. He's here instead on a estate, on a farm, not a farm, sorry, a forest, looking after the grounds. Maybe he's not brave like the soldiers are. And now, if all of that wasn't bad enough, and he doesn't want to think about it, and now here he is gonna be the man who has to deal with a disabled, he's not actually disabled, but disabled looking uh intruder on his in his forest, stepping on his peace even more. And he's gonna have to be the one who has to look after this additional person, who has to treat this additional person nicely. He's not gonna do it. You understand? It's too much for him to do. You understand? This is the thinking of Durer. This is why he hates Callum so much, because it reminds him of his own weakness, okay, of his own how he sees himself as being an extreme victim. That's why he hates Callum so much. That's why he kills the deer with such uh violence, thinking about he wants to kill his wife. That's why he hates in such a deep way. That's why he is so evil. You understand? It's um it's a coupling of feeling like a victim while while not wanting to think about it because it hurts him too much. The embarrassment or the shame or the I don't know a better word, but you understand what I'm saying. Um, and obviously at the heart of all of this is a lack of accountability or taking responsibility for, his own decisions. He's the one who chose to marry his wife. He's the one who's choosing to work on this estate. He could do something else. He's the one who's choosing to put up with his mother-in-law's comments. He's the one who's choosing to actively hate two people who haven't done anything to him. He's the one who goes and chooses to get drunk when the doctor tells him you need to, stop your lifestyle, you need to change things, and so on and so on and so on. He's the one who makes these decisions, but he doesn't take accountability or responsibility for them. So you can actually say, and this is maybe also why he hates Callum so much. Why he thinks of himself as like a weird long lost brother of Callum, and when he sees them, when he talks about it, um, because he recognizes his own lack of taking responsibility in the same way that Callum does it. You understand? Except Callum, he doesn't have hatred, he just has fear. And Durer also has an extreme amount of fear. That's another thing that we should think about. By seeing himself as a victim in all these situations, by not taking responsibility, it's connected in there as well is fear. The idea of fear. He's afraid, okay, of what he is. He's afraid of looking in the mirror. He is afraid of being honest that he is the one who messed up his own life. He's afraid of admitting all these things to himself, just like Callum is afraid that the real world can be rough sometimes. Callum is afraid of being honest with himself, that I'm a grown man and I'm still relying on my brother to make decisions for me, that I'm a grown man and I don't want to look and admit and think about death. I'm pretending like it doesn't exist. Both of them are afraid of the truth, huh? They're like mirror opposites. It's just that Callum exists in love and Durer exists in hate. But take Callum and make him hateful, and he would become a Durer as well. Understand? Someone pulled along by the tide, not taking responsibility for their actions, not taking accountability for them, instead just externalizing them. With Durer, it's a case of blaming other people. With Callum, it's a case of following along with other people. But soon enough, if you took Callum and made him hateful, he would eventually become a Durer, one way or another. Okay, does that make sense? I hope all that makes sense. Yeah, that was a lot to take in. Okay, so he hates the brothers. So the brothers arrive. The brothers arrive at the place. Okay, they start their work. Durer hates them right away. He starts to hatch his plan to get rid of them and starts to think about killing them, especially Callum. He hates Callum the most. Neil, I believe he hates just because he's attached to Callum. If Neil wasn't attached to Callum, he would probably hate him, but not in the same way that he hates him now. Okay, so um, we're then sort of introduced to this next character who is she is the highest up at this point in the story. I believe her husband is the one who actually owns the place. I can't remember yet. Double check it. In any case, she is the one who is in charge, let's say, of everyone in everyone else in the story. Lady Runcie Campbell. Okay. So what she represents, okay, is a sort of contradiction or hypocrite in a sense. She's a person who professes to be a strong Christian, who has Christian values, who believes in Christian things, while at the same time, she also holds very prejudiced and very what's the word? Very prejudiced and very supremacist ideas about uh, her station in life and about herself in terms of, because she's a lady, because she has a certain title, because she has a certain amount of money, certain properties, she feels as though she is above. Fundamentally, she is above everyone else on the estate, in the place. Huh? She feels that she is above all of her workers, and she especially feels that she is above the corn gatherers. Huh? So she has this contradiction, okay, in herself of professing to be a Christian, but at the same time acting very unchristian in terms of seeing herself as above everyone, as opposed to acting like humble and being loving and all that and all that. Okay, so what she does, okay, to bridge the gap in of her hypocrisy, excuse me, what she does to bridge the gap of her hypocrisy, okay, is she uses Durer um as a sort of like justification for the evil things that she herself feels and believes. In other words, she knows that the brothers, as a Christian, she knows that the brothers should be treated kindly, they should be paid well, they should be fed well, they should be talked to in a respectful way as children of God. And her Christian values would lead her to believe and think these things. Okay, she shouldn't feel that she's above them because they would be her brothers in uh, in creation, her brothers in Christ. Maybe they would be on the same level as her, and moreover, as a ruler or someone with money, she should act like a good person and she should be charitable to them. What would Jesus do? She'd be asking these questions. And she should be nice to them and treat them well and better than they would expect, like a Christian. That's what she should be doing, right? But she doesn't do that. Instead, she gives them dirty housing. She gives them, she doesn't pay them that much money. She talks down to them. She treats them very badly to the point that her own son, who is actually a representation of a good Christian or a Christian living his values, her own son argues with her about this and he sort of rebels against her and like defends the corn gatherers. Yeah. Okay, so what she does. what she does, okay, to bridge this gap, like I said, of her hypocrisy of not acting like the way that she knows she should act, is she uses Durer as a sort of like justification, like I said. So basically, when she wants to do something evil or bad to the cone gatherers, she will ask Durer his opinion, and because she knows that he hates them, and she knows that he will say the most evil or hateful thing, and so therefore she can say, well, that's Durer saying it, and she can lie to herself, he's a good man, or he's a smart man, he's a man who knows how to do things. And if Durer says it's okay, then it's not bad if I say so. It's okay to do too. That makes sense. Durer says that they shouldn't. Durer says that they shouldn't be living in the humane conditions, the okay conditions of the beach hut. I really don't want them to have the hut because they're like servants to me. They're like below me. They don't deserve to be living in humane, good conditions or okay conditions. So let me ask Durer. I know that he hates them. And yes, just like that, Durer says, yeah, you shouldn't let them live there. They don't deserve it. They're dirty, whatever he says. And then she gets that justification that now she's not alone in sort of mistreating them and abusing them, but she has Durer to back her up. And also she has him to do things for her, like to treat them badly if she wants him to. And so she uses him as like a to make her feel less bad about how she treats the cone gatherers, basically. Does that make sense? It's like there's a logical fallacy called appeal to the majority. And there's another one called reference to authority. Um this isn't necessarily appeal to the majority, but it shares some of the qualities of it, which is sort of the idea that if this was really bad, other people wouldn't do it like that. If this was really bad, other people wouldn't do it. Since there's other people doing it, it can't be bad. Makes sense like that. That's what she's doing with Dora, basically. That's the idea. Okay. And she knows she's doing it. Okay, which is why at the end she has a bunch of confused when Callum dies, or is killed, she has such a bunch of confused emotions when she has her little breakdown at the end. Okay, anyway, moving on now. So we had now the sort of a very, very key point in the text, which is the deer drive. In other words, the hunt. Okay, that they go on. Now when the hunt happens, um, Callum especially is against being involved in the hunt because remember he is someone who is extremely loving and kind, but also he refuses to see the stark or brutal or you know life and death related realities of life, of nature. So he refuses to think about or try to understand or admit or acknowledge, that's a good word, uh, death or killing in nature. He doesn't want to see it. He doesn't want to look at it. He just wants to pretend it doesn't exist. Okay. Anyway, so what happens is the brothers are forced to go and take part. And then during the during the event, during the deer drive, there's a moment where essentially Durer sort of uh I believe that the deer gets shot. I can't remember exactly if deer gets shot or not. Anyway, the deer is they are in front of Callum, and Callum sort of tries to protect the deer. I think it gets shot. Yeah, it gets shot, and then Callum tries to protect the deer or tries to tries to be near it, tries to show it kindness, as obviously that's his nature. And then Dura comes along, pushes Callum out the way, and starts to seizing the farmer's head with one hand, cut the throat savagely. Yes, he threw the hunchback off. That's Callum. He threw him away from the deer, cut the throat savagely with the other. Okay, and when he kills the deer, what he is thinking about is not the deer. He kills the deer by cutting its throat in an extremely brutal way, with blood coming out and everything. He kills the deer and he is thinking about killing his wife. Okay? Again, sort of manifesting or sort of representing, symbolizing the thing we talked about before, which is he doesn't take action or responsibility for himself or for his life. He feels like the eternal victim. He thinks about killing his wife, which is an extreme act, when he could have, for all of those years, just divorced her, right? He thinks about killing her in the same way that a child thinks about, killing his bully or something, or killing his parent. Um, why? Because the idea of, say, standing up to his bully in terms of, like telling him stop this, or standing up to his parent in a way, saying like stop this, or you can't do this, or taking the steps that it would take, say if it was his school bully, say, taking the steps it would take, like for example, like learning how to defend himself, and then learning how to be confident enough to confront the bully and tell him like that's enough, and then being willing to take on the risks of saying that's enough, and being willing to fight him, and so on, so on. All of those take action, and they take courage, and they take actually, they're difficult, right? They're difficult to fantasize instead about just killing the bully in some kind of magical scenario. That's like way easier, yeah. That's like way easier because you're not gonna do it, and you're not. There's no sort of cost to doing that yet. It's just in your head. So he is the same way. He fantasizes about killing his wife when he could have just taken the action of courage of leaving her. But then, if you usually ask, okay, isn't that easier? Why would he not just do that? Because then he would have to face the possibility of not finding someone else to marry. He would have to be courageous enough to be willing to maybe lose his job at this place because people might look down on him. He would have to face his mother-in-law and everything that she's gonna say. He'd have to face telling his wife that he doesn't like her anymore. It would take like actual courage. It would take like him doing things that would impose a cost on him that he doesn't want to do yet. That's the point. Same as Callum. If Callum was honest, okay, if he was actually honest and he was actually willing to accept reality, it would impose a cost on him because he would have to start to think about, death is a real thing. Animals kill each other. Okay, now how do I make my ethics into that? And actually, I should stop relying on my brother so much to make decisions for me. Let me try and be an adult. Let me try and grow up. All of those are costs. It requires courage. So again, both Callum and Durer, both of them lack courage as a major um, quality. Both of them lack courage. You see, it's just that Callum exists in love, like I said, and Durer exists in hate, which is why they end up different. And why Dura kills him. Fundamentally, love and hate are opposites, and one has to take over the other, pretty much. Okay, excuse me. He goes on to say he understood for the first time why he hated the hunchback, meaning Callum, so profoundly, and yet was so fascinated by him. For many years, his life had been stunted. Look at this, exactly what I was saying before. His life had been stunted, misshapen, obscene, and hideous. And this misbegotten creature was its personification. Do you see? He's saying, Callum is just like me. You understand? He sees himself in Callum and he hates him for it because he hates himself. That's the idea. Like I said. Okay, so the story goes on, and now essentially after this happens, and Callum is extremely traumatized by what he's just saw. The brothers become, especially Neil. Neil becomes extremely um, hateful towards Lady Runcie Campbell. He begins to despise her because what she just put his brother through. And I believe you can double check this. I believe that the brothers were told that Callum would be kept away from the killing, and so because that wasn't kept, and he was exposed to it and extremely traumatized by it. Neil now hates Lady Runcie Campbell more and just basically views her and views the whole sort of setup of this estate as being oppressive and being sort of abusive to him and to his brother. And this is only going to be confirmed in this sort of scene and what happens after. So anyway, the brothers are in town. I can't remember exactly why they go to town for, maybe for a break. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll be honest with you. any case, there's a moment where Lady Runcie Campbell is in her what do you call it, carriage. Excuse me. In her car. I don't know if it's a car or a horse car. I can't remember. It's not important. Anyway, she's in her vehicle and the weather is bad, right? The weather is bad and the brothers are walking, so she could offer them a lift. Okay? Now, instead of doing that, she says no, that we won't give them a lift. She says no. And when her son Roderick tries to debate with her and argues with her, she tells him off. Huh? She tells him off. And Roderick, he knows this isn't right, and he's only a child, but he knows it's not right. And that's why he says, but we carried dogs in the car. Yeah? We carried dogs in this car. So what this tells you, okay, is that in LRC's mind, Lady Ramsey Campbell, in her mind, the brothers are lower to her than dogs are. Because she has extreme prejudice towards the poor and towards people who are not who don't have the same title or status as her. You see, this is the what I said before, like she acts or pretends she's like a Christian, but she's not. She's like a supremacist or a person with a lot of prejudice. Okay. Okay. Now, um at the same time or just slightly after this or around the same time, Durer goes to the doctor and he talks to the doctor about his different issues. The doctor asks him about his wife and if him and Durer have been her and Durer have been intimate. And Durer obviously says no. And anyway, some more things happen in that case. Now the key is that at this point in the text, okay, Durer essentially commits to his plan. Okay. He essentially hits the point where he's at the point of no return. And it's at this point where he makes his decision, okay, where the evil and the hatred has boiled up in him so much that he now must release it on Kalama. He can't hold it back anymore. He now must fully commit to this dark path that he's on. Okay? And a very good quote for this that you can remember is he, meaning Durer, felt in a mood for murder, rape, or suicide. The three sort of, or the two, murder and rape, most fundamentally evil crimes. And then the suicide one being attached to his sense of being a victim, in that he feels like his life is meaningless, his life is worthless. And so he now wants to end everything. But before he does, he wants to take Callum. He wants to take Callum with him. And what you can think about, okay, in terms of what you can think about, okay, in terms of Callum, because you might think, okay, why does he hate Callum so much? Yeah, even though I explained it before. Think about Callum represents the embodiment, the real life version of everything that Durer hates about himself and feels about himself inside. Callum represents that physically. So Durer seeing this physical manifestation of everything that he hates about himself, his weakness, his victimization, his lack of responsibility, his cowardice, his lack of courage, his strong fear that he feels that he doesn't want to face, his uh his uh his humble position in that he feels everyone looks down on him like the way they look down on Callum. His his lack of his lack of honor in terms of like people admiring him or looking up to him or seeing him as a great person, his lack of achievement, his all of these things that he hates, deeply hates about himself, he sees manifested in Callum. You understand? As Callum is like the symbolic manifestation, physical manifestation of all of these things made real. So every time he looks at them, he looks at Callum or thinks about Callum, he burns inside. He burns inside. So Callum cannot be alive as long as he is alive. One of them must die, and in a sense, he feels if he kills Callum, maybe there's a chance that he can have some release from his hatred, from that burning that he has. If he kills this representation of what he hates, maybe there's a chance that he can not feel it. Now, obviously, this is not going to be the case. As soon as he kills Callum, he's going to feel it even more. He's going to essentially lose himself completely, which is why he has to kill himself too, which is what happens at the end, which we'll get to in just 1 minute. Okay, so he makes his decision that, that's it. I have to kill him. There's no going back now. And there's one more sort of scene. There's one more sort of scene, which is that there's a storm. There's a storm, and the brothers who are not allowed to go into the beach hut, they take shelter in there because the storm is extremely strong and like a tree could fall on them or something that they could get hurt. Anyway, what happens is the lady appears at the beach hut when the storm happens, and she gets extremely angry with the brothers for being in there, and she kicks them out. She kicks them out basically. Okay, and this is the last. This is the last. This moment is the last moment where Neil has any level of care, concern, respect, or like anything other than hatred towards her and towards the whole estate in terms of the people in power, especially her in general. So after this happens, Neil now completely hates her, and he essentially just he wouldn't mind if she dies or anything bad happens to her. Okay. Now this basically sets up the end of the story. This sets up the end of the story. So, excuse me, Lady Ramsay Campbell's son Roderick climbs a tree and he's imitating the cone gatherers because he likes them a lot because he's a good boy. He likes them and he's obviously also innocent and kind and so on, and he takes a liking to them, and so he wants to copy them. So he climbs a tree and he gets stuck. Okay, he gets stuck at the top. Now, he gets stuck in a place which is dangerous. If he falls, obviously, he could get hurt badly. If not, die. He could die. Okay. So this happens, and the lady basically sends someone to go and find the cone gatherers so that they can come and save her son. Okay. The person comes to Neil, because Callum, I think he's up a tree. Yeah. But anyway, he comes to Neil and he says, "Look, come and save the kid." Neil says no. They argue for a little bit, and then basically Neil says, "Okay, fine. If you want us to come, the lady herself needs to come here, apologize, and basically ask us herself. She has to humble herself and show that she sees us as human beings, basically, that she doesn't just see us as like, below her, which obviously she does. And she has to do that. Okay, so the guy goes away. Along the way, he meets Durer, and then Durer sees his opportunity. He has his gun with him, and he starts marching towards where the cone gatherers are. Okay, now after this, when the man gets back to the lady, he says, Durer is going towards them. I seen them over there. He tells them, listen, they want you to come yourself and to go and basically apologize and say, you need help. So she gets really angry. She would have hit him in other circumstances, but she loves her son a lot, and so she basically goes and she goes to the cone gatherers to go and ask them for help. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so then at the end, Durer arrives to where the cone gatherers are, while the lady is sort of running towards them. She's running through the forest. She's getting caught in different branches, and she's getting, her clothes are getting sort of torn on the different sharp edges of different branches. And then when she gets close, she hears a gunshot. And essentially, what's happened, okay, is that Durer has shot Callum while he's in the tree. And when he shoots Callum, she then sees Durer walking away from, where the brothers are. And the quote is something like he was full of desolation, meaning when Durer shoots Callum, what happens is he doesn't feel happy or he doesn't feel relief. He essentially feels completely empty and completely destroyed. Desolation. Desolate is like a desert with nothing in it. So he feels completely destroyed, empty. Uh, nothing except evil and pain, pain to the point of feeling nothing. He feels like he is nothing, right? And then at that point, that is when he kills himself as well. So, and then the text ends basically with Neil sort of screaming after Callum, who is still hanging in the tree. It's a bit symbolic, I guess, that he's hanging from the tree. He's been killed amidst nature and so on. But we don't need to get into all that. Let's just think about the story. Okay. And then at the end, basically, Lady Rhodes Campbell, she collapses to her knees and she has a mixture of emotions, which are a bit confusing. You could say maybe it's her hypocrisy has, because it says she feels something like joy. It's a bunch of things that it's very confusing, which I guess to me, I would read it as her hypocrisy and her, inner conflict in terms of how she behaves, what she sort of believes versus how she actually acts and what she really believes. All of those get mashed up together and they sort of present themselves as a complex, contradiction or a set of emotions that are like they don't really make sense. Okay. So in any case, in terms of the text, so that's a summary of the text, yeah, and with all the characterization and themes and so on, or explanation and analysis. But just to sum up and make this a little bit more specific for a minute or so. Um, in terms of the text, I'd say fundamentally one of the main theme fundamentally is essentially the study of evil or the theme of evil. And you can look at this obviously from the character of Durer, which is, you can understand that Durer represents evil in the text. But he's not the only one. He's not the only one. He represents evil in the text in terms of sort of how does a person become evil? It starts from obviously seeing themselves as a victim, seeing everyone else as their victimizer, as the people who are bad to them, having that desire to hurt them as a result of that, while at the same time not taking any responsibility, and at the same time allowing hatred to build up over time and then exploding essentially. That's his story. Also being a coward, that's also his story. Being a coward, which is also part of the reason or fundamentally why he doesn't take any action. He refuses to have any courage, take action, which would have some cost attached to it. Uh, and so he allows himself to be victimized, basically. That's like the story. But obviously, that's one type of evil. That would be like individual evil. Um, you also have, or murderous individual evil. You also have the evil which is more subtle from Lady Roncy Campbell. Her evil is the one of prejudice, hating people for no other reason than the amount of money they have or the sort of background that they come from. And her evil is sort of, it's like her evil is not. Her evil is more subtle, and to some extent, it's more accepted by the people around her. It's like understood but more accepted, in that people don't see her evil, her prejudice of others, in the same way that they see Durer's hatred and his desire to kill. Yeah, but they're both evil, essentially. Okay, now you also have the evil. Evil also exists in other characters. Callum also has a form of evil. Okay, and this probably isn't talked about too much. Callum's evil is his cowardice. Callum's evil fundamentally is his cowardice, his lack of courage, and his refusal to be brave. And it is because of his lack of courage and his refusal to be brave that he ends up getting shot. That's why. If Callum was brave and strong, like his brother Neil, he he would have been able to stand next to his brother and stand up to Durer, stand up to anyone who was oppressing both of them. Together, they would have been a very strong force. Understand? As opposed to being like a burden on his brother, he would have been his brother's supporter, his backup. But because he refuses to be brave, refuses to acknowledge the reality of life, he acts like a kid. When he's not a kid, he's like 30 or something. Yeah, and he's not physically that's very important to remember. He's not actually physically disabled because he can climb trees better than Neil can climb trees. He can move and everything. He's strong. It's just a lack of internal strength. He's a coward basically, and he masks his. He's forgiven for his cowardice because of his kindness, essentially. Because he's kind, he is. We forgive him for his cowardice, even though it's his cowardice that leads him to being killed, and as a result, his brother being massively traumatized by that death, and Durer not being put in check. If Callum was strong and brave, him and his brother would have put Durer in check, and Durer would not have messed with the two of them. You understand? It would be different. Okay, so there is his evil. um, I wouldn't say Neil has any evil. Maybe you could say he has a mistake or he does something wrong, which is he doesn't well, to be honest, he does to some extent. I was gonna say that he doesn't force Callum to, uh mature or grow up, but he does try to be honest with you. He does try, he tries to, like, you know, not lie to him, not baby him and stuff, but so I can't really put any blame on him, to be honest with you. Um yes, okay, so that's like how evil manifests in the text. Okay, now the other theme opposite to this one would be the theme of brotherhood. You could also analyze this as the theme of good. And obviously, this would be represented by the two brothers, Callum and Neil. In that Callum is extremely loving to Neil. He loves him. He never fights against him. He never, says anything negative or judges him in any kind of way. He loves him completely. He looks up to him and so on and so on. Neil obviously is very caring towards Callum. He looks after him. He protects him. He tries to stand up for him and all that. He tries to be a leader to him. Excuse me. Um, and so they're both there for each other, in that kind of way. Also, you could imagine that Roderick, he also would sort of fit into this. He's like a brother to them, even though they're not related or anything. In that he tries to treat them nicely, he tries to speak up on their behalf, he acts like a proper Christian would, basically. Now the last thing I said there, necessity of strength and kindness, this connects to what I said before about Callum. Okay, what I believe Callum's fundamental flaw is. Um, so that's laid out now. I just would say this, I guess I could say it another way, which is like the philosophical point, if you take something away from this. The philosophical lessons that we learn from this text. Number one would be something like evil is developed over time via the path of Durer. Evil isn't just something that happens like in a night. Evil is something that develops over time due to having hatred in your heart, not being courageous, not being honest. It's a combination of cowardice and lying, pretty much. That's how you get evil. So, so just something to watch out for. If you feel yourself start to get hateful and you're not willing to acknowledge or recognize what it is that you might be doing wrong, or you might not be addressing, you might not be being brave about, you might want to watch out and look out for that, because you could be on a dangerous path if you're blaming other people for, your situation in life. If you're being hateful and planning and fantasizing about how you could get your revenge, just be careful, because you could be on a very dangerous path in life, and you can see it doesn't end up well. Because the more you engage with this evil sort of fantasy, when you engage with this evil energy, you pay the price in your own soul. Basically, you pay the price in trading your own happiness. It's like both the good man and the evil man. This is true. Both the good man and the evil man suffer. Both of them. There's no getting away from it. Both the good man and the evil man suffer. But the good man gets a break from his suffering from time to time. He feels love from time to time, joy from time to time. But the evil man, because he becomes part of his own suffering, he increases it. He takes part in it. He increases it by hurting other people, taking revenge and planning revenge. He never feels a break from his suffering. It's just something that is a constant for him. Something to keep in mind. Okay, now the other thing is just on the other side, okay, which is that kindness itself is not enough. Being loving itself is not enough. You need to be strong alongside the loving. If you're not strong, excuse me, if you're not strong, And if you can't defend yourself, if you're not brave, then you run the risk, okay, of becoming a victim like Callum. Makes sense. If you if you are brave, if you are strong, if you learn how to defend yourself, if you learn to be brave, then you can be as loving as you want to, and people will not step on you. Understand? Because they will recognize if they try to step on you, there's a cost. There's a cost. Mm? Lions don't just fight, other big animals. If there's a lion and he sees an elephant, he won't attack the elephant, but the elephant won't attack the lion. Why? Because they know if I attack, if I attack this elephant, I might get hurt. Yeah, I might lose my life. Yeah. And the elephant thinks, if I attack this lion, yeah, I might get hurt. Yeah, I might lose my trunk or something. I might die. Yeah, if the other lions are there too. Or I'm gonna get hurt. Yeah, I'm gonna bleed. Yeah, something's gonna be cut. Something's gonna happen. I'm gonna bleed. Yeah. So that's the idea, right? That's the thing. You don't want to be looked at as like a rabbit. Yeah, you don't want to be like that. Excuse me. Especially. So that would be in general, yeah, to all my students, be strong in addition to being loving and being kind. Love is the answer. Okay, but you just need to have strength behind it. Every hero carried a sword for a reason. It's not just for fun. It's not just for show yet. And it's not because we want to use it, but it's because there's certain situations where we have to use it. Understand? That'd be my advice to all of my students, to my male students. If you're a young man and you're watching me, it's your duty to become strong. Yeah, you don't have an option yet. You must learn. You must become strong and you must become brave. You have no option. If you don't do these things, you are neglecting your duty as a man. Understand? Don't call yourself my student if you don't learn how to defend yourself and you don't actively learn to become brave. Understand? Because there will be situations, excuse me, and I hope and I really hope that they are extremely few. Because when you're in these situations, it's not nice. It's terrible. But there will be at least one situation in your life, okay, and I hope they are very few, where you will be called upon to take action to protect someone, protect yourself. And in that situation, you must learn or you must be brave and strong. So to prepare for that situation, you need to start preparing for it now, basically. Because otherwise, when you be in that situation, you won't be able to do what you are supposed to do. And that will be very bad. Understand? People you love could possibly get hurt. You could possibly get hurt, if not something as bad as what happens in this story. So don't slack. Don't slack. Huh? Don't slack. You feel better too, yeah. Don't slack. Okay. Okay, so that's the story and that's it, yeah. So hope that helps and hope you learned something. And as always, take care. Take care.